What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. On today's video I want to compare two running watches that are under $200 and that represent incredible value. And the first one that we're going to be looking at to compare is the COROS Pace 2. Now the COROS Pace 2 isn't new, it has been out for a couple of years, and in my opinion at least, the COROS Pace 2 has had the crown of best entry-level running watch for a long time. In fact, COROS continually updates these watches, so they're adding new features. So the Pace 2 that you buy today is vastly better than the Pace 2 that you bought 2 years ago. About a little while ago, Polar released a new watch. It's the Polar Pacer. I know, very similar names. You've got the Polar Pacer and the COROS Pace 2. Now the Polar Pacer is also an entry-level running watch that is less than $200. So in this video I'm going to be going over the specs of the Polar Pacer and the COROS Pace 2 to see which you should buy. Is the COROS Pace 2 still going to hold onto the crown, or did the Polar Pacer come in and swipe it out from underneath it? Needless to say, it isn't that easy, and I think the decision is going to be left to each and every one of you based on the features that you think that you can get the most use out of. Alright, let's get into it. We've already covered price. These are both $200 watches, and both the COROS Pace 2 and the Polar Pacer are running focused watches. However, they do a lot of other sports. You can use these watches for most of the sports in your life. So let's start off with the COROS Pace 2. The COROS Pace 2 has 18 activity profiles, and all of the activities are housed on the watch. But you don't have to look at each and every one of those 18 profiles. When you press the round bezel, you can scroll through the activities that you've chosen to be on the watch. If for some reason you change your mind and you want to add a few more, you can just go to more, and then you can select all these workouts that are just kind of hidden in the background. And if you add one, you can just add it to the home screen to make it easy to find next time. Now with the Polar Pacer, you have the ability to choose from one of 130 activities. That's a lot of activities. Remember, the COROS Pace 2 only had 18 activities. Now all 130 activities are not stored on the watch, they are stored on the app. And from the app, you get to choose which activities you want to load onto the watch. And then once you've loaded them onto the watch, you can press the side right-hand button and you can access all the activities that you have loaded on there. Now, while 130 sport profiles sounds pretty good, for me at least, I am never going to use more than the 18 that is available on the COROS watch. On the Polar Pacer, you can track things like car racing, classic roller skating, and curling. Can't track those things on the COROS Pace 2. Maybe this is a question for you Canadians out there. When you go out for a friendly game of curling, do you track the activity on your sports watch? Let me know in the comments. Now, as far as size goes, the Polar Pacer and the COROS Pace 2 are fairly similar. The Polar Pacer is 45 by 45 by 11.5 and weighs 40 grams or 23 grams without the rubber strap. The COROS Pace 2, on the other hand, measures 42 by 42 by 11.7, so it's just a tad thicker than the Pacer, and it weighs between 35 and 36 grams, so just a little bit lighter. However, the COROS Pace 2 has the option to buy it with a nylon strap, and when you wear the Pace 2 with a nylon strap, it drops the weight to 29 grams. Both the Polar Pacer and the COROS Pace 2 have a 1.2 inch 240 by 240 memory and pixel display. So both of these watches have the same size display. However, you'll remember from our sizing that the Polar Pacer was 45 by 45 and the COROS Pace 2 was 42 by 42. Now that 3mm difference between the Pace 2 and the Pacer comes in the form of this bezel, which it's difficult to see around the outside because my watch is black, but if I scroll to this activity screen with the bar around the outside of the screen, you can see that it kind of identifies where the bezel is, right here on the outside. But I do think moving forward that is something that Polar is going to have to get rid of just to keep it looking a little more modern. I do like the look of the Pace 2 with the screen that goes all the way to the outside of the bezel. Now on COROS's spec sheet for the Pace 2, they state for the screen they are using Corning glass. Now Corning is the same company that makes Gorilla Glass. However, COROS has left out the word Gorilla, so I don't actually know if that means that they are using Gorilla Glass or it is actually Corning glass. The Polar Pacer, on the other hand, is a newer watch than the COROS Pace 2, and it is using Gorilla Glass 3.0. And the glass on the Polar Pacer is only 1.1mm thick. And Polar has made some advances in their screen technology, and compared with other watches of the past by Polar, the screen of the Polar Pacer is 3mm closer to the surface, making it very clear. Let's talk about battery life. I think battery life is a pretty big deal. No one likes that battery anxiety when your watch gets down too low. And of course, we'll start off with the sensational numbers. The COROS Pace 2 claims up to 20 days of battery life in regular watch mode. So just wearing it around, this watch will last 20 days. The Polar Pacer will last 7 days in regular watch mode. Now that's a big difference, right? It is a big difference, but we do have to consider that these are sports watches. And most of us are going to buy these to track our activities outside. We're going to want to use the GPS capabilities. And in full GPS mode with the optical heart rate monitor running and GPS is pinging every second, the COROS Pace 2 will last 30 hours. In the same criteria for the Polar Pacer, so GPS pinging every second and the optical heart rate monitor going on, the Polar Pacer will last 35 5 hours. So you've got 5 hours more tracking with the Polar Pacer than you do with the COROS Pace 2. The COROS Pace 2 will last 60 hours in Ultramax mode, and the Polar Pacer will last up to 100 hours in their battery saver mode. Now for both these watches, the Ultramax mode and the battery saver mode, basically they turn down the satellite sampling rate to once every couple of minutes. Both the Polar Pacer and the COROS Pace 2 do not have a touch display, which I think is a credit to both of these watches. Honestly, I'm not a fan of touch displays on sports watches. The Polar Pacer has vibration alerts only. COROS Pace 2 has vibration and audio alerts, so this watch will beep at you if you want it to. Now, as far as the vibration goes, both of these watches have good vibrators inside. It's a different way to say that. But if I had to say which one was better, I'm gonna say the COROS Pace 2 has a more powerful vibrating mechanism inside the watch. Both watches are waterproof too, up to 50 meters. Pretty good. You're not going to ruin it if you get them wet. Both the Polar Pacer and the COROS Pace 2 have proprietary charging cables. Now Polar has updated their charging cables and they now have a much nicer magnetic connection for their watch, and it just locks right on there and holds the watch pretty well while it's charging. The charging cord for the COROS Pace 2 is a little old-fashioned, and by old-fashioned I mean not magnetic. Now for those of you that have had a Garmin watch before, you're probably looking at this and thinking, yeah, that looks pretty familiar. The difference between the COROS charger and the Garmin charger, the COROS charger has 3 little connectors right inside, and the Garmin chargers usually have 4. And this just locks right into the back of the watch, and again, it holds onto it very well. It's just not magnetic. If you like to use your sports watches in extreme conditions, listen up. The Polar Pacer's operating temperature is from -10 Celsius to +50 Celsius. That's 14 to 122 Fahrenheit. COROS Pace 2 has an operating temperature of -20 Celsius to 60 Celsius. That's -4 Fahrenheit to +140 Fahrenheit. So if you are going to be going somewhere really cold or really hot, the COROS Pace 2 is going to be the best bet. Both the Polar Pacer and the COROS Pace 2 have their ability to transmit your heart rate to other devices. So perhaps you're running on a treadmill, perhaps you're riding on Zwift or on a Peloton, you can wear your watch and you can transmit your heart rate to those devices. Polar Pacer has a standard 5-button design. We have 2 buttons on the left-hand side of the watch and 3 buttons on the right-hand side of the watch. And the best thing about the Polar Pacer's buttons is that they have little ridges on them to give your finger a little more grip when you're accessing the menus, and they have a very satisfying click when you press them. The COROS Pace 2 is just a little different. It features 2 buttons on the right-hand side, and the top button is a rotating bezel. And while I've seen a lot of other reviewers complain about the rotating bezel, I think it is an excellent feature. It's an excellent way to navigate the watch, and I have come to like this a lot more than just the standard 5-button design. Now the Polar Pacer and the COROS Pace 2 both have backlights. However, the only difference is with the COROS Pace 2, the backlight stays the same brightness at all times. On the Polar Pacer, you have the ability to adjust the backlight based on your needs. To do that, we enter the menu, we scroll up to settings, we enter general settings, and scroll down to backlight brightness. From there, we can choose only on with a light button, low, medium, and high. Let's keep it on high. I like it nice and bright. Both the COROS Pace 2 and the Polar Pacer have excellent visibility in bright sunlight. Now, to be clear, the resolution is 240 by 240, and these are both memory and pixel displays, so do not expect the same kind of clarity that you get from your Garmin Epix Generation 2 or an Apple Watch or a TicWatch Pro 3. But I've never had any trouble viewing the screens on either of these watches. As far as customization goes, COROS Pace 2 has loads of watch faces that you can choose from. Whatever your mood is, you can find a watch face to fit it. The Polar Pacer, on the other hand, uses Polar's typical setup where you have the time in the middle and then you can choose what widget you want to have access to on the time screen. Now, to be clear, you can change the watch faces on the Polar Pacer. They are just not as involved as the COROS Pace 2. So if you like to customize how your watch looks, the COROS Pace 2 is the way to go. Now, one of the big differences between the COROS Pace 2 and the Polar Pacer is that the COROS Pace 2 has a thermometer and a barometric altimeter. Now, with that barometric altimeter, it gives the COROS Pace 2 the ability to know your elevation while you're out on the run. And that's not to say the Polar Pacer won't give you altitude data. However, with the Polar Pacer, you're going to have to wait till you come home and upload it, and then you'll get altitude data based on the GPS course. The barometric altimeter in the COROS Pace 2 also allows you to get power data. And for me, this is the most important difference between the COROS Pace 2 and the Polar Pacer. The power metric tracks how much energy you're using to run. I think it is an excellent data set to have, but it probably took me about 13, 14 years of running before I started paying attention to power data. Now, to get power data in the Polar ecosystem, you're going to have to pay $100 more and get the Polar Pacer Pro. But remember, this is just one metric for measuring your runs. If that's not important to you, really not a big deal. Okay, let's move on to heart rate accuracy. I've been using both these watches for quite a while, and I found that they are very similar. Polar is using their Precision Prime optical heart rate sensor, and if we look at the back of the watch, we have 10 LEDs, and then we have 4 receivers on the inside of the LEDs. COROS Pace 2, on the other hand, features 4 LEDs, 2 on each side side of the one receiver right in the middle. So just looking at the backs of the two watches like this, the Polar Pacer appears to have the hardware to make it a little more accurate than the COROS Pace 2. So let's look at the data. Let's look at the two watches compared to each other. And what you're seeing on your screen right now is when I went out and I ran 800-meter intervals. And just looking at it quickly from a macro perspective, it looks very similar. Let's go ahead and zoom in just a little bit into these intervals and we'll look at some anomalies of the data. And for those of you watching at home, the red is the Polar Pacer, the purple here in the front is the COROS Pace 2. And let's look at this first interval right off the bat. And we can see that there is quite a difference between the Polar Pacer's heart rate reading and the COROS Pace 2's heart rate reading. I would say that the Polar Pacer is a little more on target right here. My heart rate increases rapidly, whereas with the COROS Pace 2, it kind of falters for a second before increasing, and then we kind of peak out at right around the same peak. The second interval and the third interval, and I think this is too close to call. It's only a beat or two off between watches. But on the fourth interval, this is what I want to draw your attention to, because again, we have the Polar Pacer increasing to about my maximum heart rate on this interval, but the COROS Pace 2 appears to again falter for just a second before climbing, and then right here, this is the thing that I have the biggest problem with, is when there are peaks or when there are drops in the heart rate data, because this one peak from the COROS Pace 2 skews all my data, and if I'm using this data to train by, this is giving me faulty information. It appears that the Polar Pacer remained pretty consistent, and we can see the trend here kind of getting higher and higher as I go through the intervals, and then on the fifth and sixth interval, again, I think those are close enough. So based on the technology, based on the hardware, and on the data from comparing the two watches, I have to give the heart rate accuracy to the Polar Pacer over the COROS Pace 2. As far as GPS accuracy goes between the Polar Pacer and the COROS Pace 2, I haven't found anything that really stands out enough to tell you guys about. Both of the watches appear to track very similar. If I zoom in on this point right here, this is where I stopped and I went over the median in order to turn around and go back the way I was coming. Right here on this corner, there is a little difference between the blue and the orange. Now the blue is the COROS Pace 2, the orange is the Polar Pacer. And in this one instance where I kind of pull a U-turn right here, I know that the Polar Pacer is a little more accurate just because I know that I jumped across the median right before the start of the trees. And then if we scroll back the way we came, we can see that both watches are remarkably similar, right on top of each other, running in the bike lane. It's actually very impressive how similar these two watches are. Both these watches are focused on running. They are running watches. However, they do a lot more. And one of the things they do well is track your sleep. Now, COROS has just made a pretty big update to the Pace 2 where they added REM sleep into the data that they track. However, this is one part where Polar clearly excels. Now, the COROS ecosystem does track your sleep. However, it only tells you how much you slept. And there's only so much you can do with that data. Now, the Polar Pacer has access to the Polar ecosystem and the Polar Flow app, and it tracks your sleep plus stages. And the best part is that it gives you a sleep score. So it takes all your sleep, it takes your REM sleep, your light sleep, your deep sleep, it combines it all together and it gives you a sleep score. The Polar app is going to compare how you've slept over the past couple of days, and it's going to compare the sleep that you got each night to what's normal for you. And it's going to track how much you were regenerated during your sleep. It then breaks it down pretty easily for you. It will tell you about how much the sleep charged you up, but also how much your autonomic nervous system was recharged during the night. And I think this is just a fantastic way to delve a little deeper into our personal data. So for the sleep tracking, I'm going to say the Polar Pacer has it over the COROS Pace 2. Now I just want to talk briefly about some of the data that you can get from both of these watches. We're going to start with the COROS Pace 2. Now, as I said, COROS came up with a great update where they updated the REM sleep to the sleep tracking, but that's not all they've done. They have continually updated the firmware of the COROS Pace 2 over the last 2 years. And we get some pretty good data now. So to access the data from the COROS Pace 2, we rotate the rotating bezel, and first up, we have our sleep. If we keep rolling down, we can see that my running performance is 94%. Obviously, that is not very good. I find that whenever I run easy, my running performance is low, and when I do a workout, it increases. We keep rolling down, we can see that my fatigue level is 43. It gives me my base fitness and the load impact of my last run, and then it gives you your recovery information. So it says I am at 87%. I'm ready for easy training. But right on the bottom of the screen, we can see that it's only another 2 hours until hard training. Scroll down one more time and we get to calories and the amount of time that I've spent working out today. Scrolling down one more time gives me my heart rate data over time. Next up is the altitude over time, and we can see it's pretty flat just because I've been sitting in the house for the last couple hours. Scroll down one more time and we have the pressure over time, and this is due to the barometric altimeter. This is one of my favorite features on the COROS Pace 2, and that tells me when the sunrise is going to be and when it's going to set. I do not have this data point on the Polar Pacer. Scroll down one more time, we've got the notification screen. The last thing that happened was a call from my wife. Now, notifications on the Polar Pace 2 are about the only smartwatch feature that you have on this watch. Okay, so we're going to get into that in just a second. But let me show you how to access some of the tools on the Polar Pacer. Now, the Polar Pacer is a little different because you actually get to choose which data you see on your widgets. On every watch screen, if I press this side button, I'm going to access it and I'm going to be able to get more information. Right now I have the nightly recharge. Now we had just talked about the sleep information. My atomic nervous system charge was negative 1.5 and my sleep charge was 70. Now I can scroll down and I can see all the information that I can on the app right on the watch. If we scroll up, I have my last training. Now I can see the last couple of activities that I did. Of course, if I press this button again on the side, I can go ahead and access that activity information, scroll down and see all the information from that activity. FuelWise is only available on the Polar ecosystem, and we can see that this has measured my calories at 1297, and it says that on my last run this morning, I used 55% carbs, 2% protein, and 43% fat. Now this is good for you that are looking to refuel after your workouts, to know what you need to refuel with. Let's get back to the home screen and scroll up one more time. This screen will tell you your current heart rate if I had the watch on. This is my training load and it tells me that I am being productive. If I enter it, it gives you more information on your training load. And I'm going to show you the same metric on this watch. And I scroll down to this screen. If I enter it, it gives me my 7-day load total. I can scroll down and see my 4-week intensity distribution. So both watches are giving us feedback on the activities that we're doing. They're helping us become better. However, this next part is where the Polar Pacer kind of pulls ahead from the COROS Pace 2. And I think this is one of those things that is going to separate the people that would rather have the Polar Pacer from the people that want the COROS Pace 2. And that is Polar's FitSpark Training Guide. With Polar's FitSpark Training Guide, the Polar Pacer is going to recommend activities for you to round out your fitness, to make you the best person that you can be. Now I have the FitSpark Training Guide on the watch right now. We can see in the upper right hand corner it's saying supportive and it's telling me to strengthen my core. I'm going to enter the FitSpark Training Guide and it gives me a couple options. When you go ahead and enter it, you can scroll down and press start and it tells you what to do. If we scroll down even more, it actually gives little diagrams, moving diagrams of the activities that we have to do. So mainly because of the FitSpark Training Guide, I think that puts the Polar Pacer into a different realm from the COROS Pace 2. The Polar Pacer also features the Serene app, and this walks you through a breathing exercise. The bubble just expands and then it contracts, telling you when to breathe. Just to dig into the smart features of the Polar Pacer a little more, one of my favorite things is the weather app. And we can see the last couple hours with the temperatures at the bottom, and if I press the right hand button, it opens it up and it gives me some weather information. The last smart feature that I'm going to tell you about for the Polar Pacer is the music controls. Now there is no onboard storage for music on either the COROS Pace 2 or the Polar Pacer, but on the Polar Pacer you can control your smartphone and so music and podcasts and audiobooks from your wrist. Now I have music controls as one of my widgets on the Pace 2, and when you press this button again on the right hand side, that's how you access all the widgets. You're going to access the information that you have on your phone, and from here you can press play, you can press pause, you can skip back a track, you can go forward a track, and you can change the volume. Change the volume, you hit the button on the upper left hand corner, and then it's as easy as pressing up and pressing down. And this is especially good if your phone is tucked away in a pack and you can't access it immediately, but you want to change tracks or what you're listening to. With the Polar Pacer, you can do that. So my friends, who should buy which watch? That is a great question. And honestly, I think you're going to have to make that decision for yourself, because some of the features that differentiate the two watches are pretty key features. If a barometric altimeter and being able to measure power from the wrist is something that you value, then the COROS Pace 2 is the watch for you. However, if you're looking for additional smart features, a little more detail when it comes to sleep tracking, as well as in my testing, slightly better heart rate tracking, then the Polar Pacer is probably the one you should go with. Oh, and one more thing that I just remembered as I was wrapping up the video, Polar Pacer does give you the ability to test yourself. And basically it gives you three options. You have a running test, a walking test, and a fitness test. Now the running test is basically where you go all out and it gives you your VO2 max, but it also gives you the chance to do a walking test, which is a 15-minute heart rate measured test. And at the end of it, it also gives you an estimated VO2 max. And then the fitness test, which is arguably my favorite test, gives you a VO2 max estimate just by measuring your heart rate while you're sitting on the sofa. Now it doesn't take me to tell you this, but the running test is going to be the most accurate, but I do like the fitness test. I like to sit there and being told how fit I am. And just a few final personal thoughts of my own. The COROS Pace 2 has been out for several years. However, COROS has repeatedly and consistently updated this watch. The Polar Pacer is brand new, and in my opinion, I think it pulls just ahead of the COROS Pace 2. However, as I already said, if you're after power data, Polar Pacer does not offer that. Now, of course, aesthetics are all personal, but I do like the way that the Polar Pacer looks over the COROS Pace 2. Perhaps it's because I've had the COROS Pace 2 for such a long time, and I haven't had the Polar Pacer as long. All right, guys, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for staying this far in the video. If you have liked it, if you have enjoyed it, give this video a thumbs up. subscribe if you're not already, and let me know in the comments which GPS watch you use for running. And if you had the choice out of the COROS Pace 2 or the Polar Pacer, which would you choose and why? Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.